Welcome everyone to the Exceptional Educators Playbook. Hello, I'm Stephanie Kidd and this is Miss Cheryl Mathis.
Hi everyone.
Today, the purpose of this podcast is to offer professional learning opportunities to meet the needs of our teachers and giving their teachers a platform for them to share their expertise. And today we have with us Miss Donna Combs. But keep in mind that this is our last podcast for the year, and we'll be continuing this next year. So that's a plus. But today we're going to talk about specially designed instruction in the low incidence and for special education. So we are excited because Miss Donna Combs is here with us from Breathitt County High School, and she's going to share with us how she determines specially designed instruction and provides examples of SDI in her classroom.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of go ahead and let Miss Donna introduce herself.
My name is Donna Combs, and I work at Breathitt County High School, and I've been at Breathitt since 1996. I was an instructional assistant before I became a special needs teacher in 2008. I have been teaching special ed for 13 years.
Awesome. That's good to know, Donna. Welcome, and so glad that you could join us today. So, of course, today we're going to be talking about SDI. And so, Donna, could you kind of explain to the folks about SDI in teacher-friendly terms, and what is SDI exactly?
SDI is specially designed instruction, and it's how you are going to provide the accommodations and the needs of the students that we work with, especially the special ed students. It's to find individual needs on how they can be successful in the regular ed environment.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds
Yeah,
pretty
I'm
cool.
going to go ahead and give the textbook definition that we've got, and it is specially designed instruction is what the teacher does to instruct, assess, and reteach the student. SDI describes how the teacher adapts the content, the methodology, or the delivery of instruction to address the unique needs of a student with disabilities and to ensure access for the general curriculum. While SDI must be provided by a special education teacher or a qualified related service person, SDI is planned, designed, and may be delivered through the integration and collaboration format or model.
Oh,
That's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful, Stephanie. Good job, Stephanie. All right. So SDI is pretty complicated, but Donna is going to bring it down on a level we can all understand. So Donna, when we're talking about SDI and of course what the teacher is going to do for that student, how do you determine the student's need for SDI, especially in terms of formative assessment or collaboration with regular ed teacher observation, building relationship, those kinds of things? So how do you determine the student's needs for SDI?
Well, first of all, you have to build that relationship with your students so that you can recognize when they're having difficulties. A lot of my students, we really use paraphrasing a lot in order to get them to understand it, because a lot of the regular ed teachers, they put it in technical forms, terms and stuff that sometimes it gets our special needs children a little bit confused. So if you put it in just regular, simple terms, then they start to understand what you're talking about.
Okay, sounds awesome. So how about in terms of formative assessment?
What I do with formative assessment, we've got psychological reports and all that stuff like that, but a lot of that confuses the parent, not only the parents, but the students too. So what I normally do with stuff like that is I give all of my students a pre-test at the beginning of each year so that I know where they're at and what they're doing and what kind of accommodations and stuff, even if it's not time for their IEP meeting. I usually give a San Diego reading assessment or a McLeod comprehension, and that gives me a little bit of idea of what they can accomplish and understand. In math, I usually give them a pre-test on what I think their level is, but the main thing is to get this specially designed for each individual student, not as a whole group, but because everybody's learning different. So we have to do it to where we can understand what our students are needing.
Awesome. All right. Could you give us some examples of how you implement SDI in your classroom? And I know you gave us a few, but could you give us a few more?
Well, a lot of times I'll use Google Meet like especially with this virtual stuff going on, I will, when we're in a regular meeting, I try not to identify my students in a regular ed setting as special needs students. So what I do is before we get in there, I tell the student that I have an intervention Google Meet classroom link. So what I do is I tell them that if they're having difficulty with something, then we can get in that meet and we can communicate without letting everybody else know what we're talking about.
That's
so
pretty cool.
That has been really helpful with a lot of my students, because sometimes at the high school level, these, especially the boys, it's a little bit embarrassed when you have to pull one out for a test, or you have to pull one out for to discuss what the assignment is. So this way we can communicate without anybody else interrupting.
Awesome. So I guess the student just takes their device, of course, and then I guess they've got headphones. So they just, is it like an all-day meet that you have open, or do you just have it open during certain periods?
Well, I have it open for the individual classes, like that I co-teach in. Okay. Like if first period, I'm usually in with English 3. So I have a couple students in there, and what I do is I open it up for them. And then when the regular ed teacher has explained the assignment, then what we do is I open that up in case they have difficulties understanding what the teacher's asking.
Yeah, I love that idea, because that really helps the kids get what they need without, maybe just like you said, being embarrassed that they need that extra support. So that's pretty cool.
Because at the high school level, it's all about being a male image, you know. They want to keep that male image.
So do you find that students utilize that resource more so than, say, in maybe the past years or prior to using all the technology with students, that you would have to like go to their desk and kind of give them a talking to, or a system, or maybe pull them to the back of the room? I mean,
they have really enjoyed this a lot more than communicating with them in person, because a lot of times, especially you take a young man that is trying to fit in with his peers, he does not want another teacher coming there. Now, if I go around, like a lot of times, I will also, go around to regular ed students and try to help them as well. Well, then when I do that and I go by their desk, then it's not as embarrassing as it is for us if you just constantly work with that one child.
Yeah. So it's not so obvious. And Donna and myself and Stephanie and Brenda Combs had a talk on Friday, and I loved, Donna, what you said about they're all our students. It doesn't matter if they're regular ed or special ed, they're all your students, and you really took claim to all students. And so I love that. So would you kind of explain a little bit, maybe to the new teacher who may not quite understand that yet, about how you feel about all of the students being your students and your responsibility?
Well, when you're co-teaching in a regular classroom, you don't, like I said, you don't want to pinpoint just one or two students. You've got to include them. And we have a lot of young people out here that may not have been identified as special ed, that we could help as well be successful in a regular ed setting too. Because a lot of times it may be a parent or guardian doesn't know the process, or doesn't get their student identified, but they're struggling. So if we learn to help everybody instead of just a small group, then we can have these students feeling like they are all of ours and they don't care to ask. It opens up the door for all students to want to seek help. And then that makes the special ed students feel more comfortable around the regular ed students as well.
Definitely so. I love that. All right. So what advice or final thoughts would you have to share with some of the other teachers, new and veteran teachers just alike?
Go into it with your whole heart and not worry about how much time you're spending with one or two children. Try to teach them all. You've got to always make sure your special ed students is successful. And if you do it in a certain way, then they will be successful. But we've got to learn them not only to be successful in the high school level or the academic level, but also get them ready for post-secondary as well. And when you start including regular ed and special ed together, then they will be successful because they'll learn to work with other people.
Awesome.
Well, Miss Donna, I've got a question to ask. You are awesome about building relationships with your kids, and you come up with ARI projects that are terrific.
Absolutely.
And we love your ARI projects. So
Thank
I
you.
want to say, when you're building those relationships with teachers and with students, because you have to do both and you're building it out in the community, how does that help you with determining what those students may need also?
That's a good question.
A lot of times when you're doing all of that, the students are learning whether they realize they're learning or not. When you put them in a classroom and say, okay, let's work with fractions, then they say, I don't know how to do that. But when you're learning to build a raised garden or a bench, then they're working with fractions and don't even realize that they're learning that process as they go along. The kids are feeling their confidence level is going extremely high, because when you say, okay, Jason, go build this bench or go build this raised garden, and they can do it from step to step, including adding and subtracting fractions, then they can feel great about themselves, and it helps them to be ready for after school.
Definitely so. I love that. I love that. All right. Stephanie, do you have any more questions?
I actually do. We talk about specially designed instruction, as in, like I talked about, mine was the favorite thing was having concrete manipulatives out for my students and having those kind of things. What is one of your kind of go-to things that you tend to go to for most students?
Well, a lot of it is one-on-one instructions. I love one-on-one because each child learns in their own different way. And if you've got the time to do it, and we are fortunate enough here at Breathitt County to have an academic intervention class with our special needs students in it, and you have a little bit of time to actually work one-on-one with them and show them step by step of what they need to do. I love to do make a real life connection with some of the concepts that they don't understand. So if when they've got something in a math class or an English class that they're not understanding, if you can make that connected to real life, then they're going to be able to understand it a little bit better.
There you go. Definitely. That's awesome. Awesome advice. So, Donna, for the new teachers on board, could you just give us a couple real life activities or projects that they might be able to implement?
One
I know
thing
you've done
that
tons
is
of
good,
them.
that if you can afford to do it, and a lot of teachers can if they just take the time to do it. I love the activity where you incorporate, we all know that teenagers love to eat. So one thing that I really like is when I can incorporate going out to eat, where after we deliver our products to the nursing home and the hospital for a ARI grant, where I'm going to take them out to eat. But before I do that, I'm going to have some math lessons that is going to incorporate adding and subtracting and planning and budgeting and all of that. And it's going to include them being able in the end result to go out and eat, but they've got to figure out what can they eat for a certain amount of money. And you're teaching using dollars and all that stuff like that. So I love that. And anytime that a new teacher can get that relationship with that student to where even on a subject that they don't like, that you can get them interested in, then they will be successful.
Definitely so. Kind of off topic, but Donna, do you have like a guess at what percentage of kids that you've taken out to eat? Because I think you did that several times, if I'm not mistaken, in the past. But what percentage of those kids that you've taken out to eat maybe have never been in a restaurant?
I would say, as far as what I call a sit-down restaurant, I'd say probably at least 70-75% probably.
So definitely a real life example Definitely
Yes,
so.
we took a larger group, not just AORI. One time we done it as an incentive, but it was still used as math lessons as well.
Mhm.
And we was able to take, I'd say probably 80 or 85% of the students had never participated in a sit down restaurant then.
Awesome.
It was buffet style. They was able to go, as much time as we wanted. So we had to incorporate some, eating out techniques, etiquette lessons, and all that.
Yeah.
And then we used it as math calculations too. But the kids just love it. One of my favorite, besides taking them out, is also taking, especially as they get older, juniors and seniors, taking them out to the public library, the courthouse to get them an ID, especially the ones that does not have driver's license or permit, to get them a picture ID, and then take them out to eat as well. That is lessons that some of these kids don't get to learn. And it's exciting, and you could use it sort of like an incentive too, but it gets the kids, you get a closer relationship with your students that way.
Definitely so. All right. I love that. Donna, is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Anything we missed or anything else you want to talk with us about?
With the SDI, they just, new teachers especially, does not need to get overwhelmed with it, because a lot of this will come naturally. They just need to, once they get to know their students, they will learn what specially designed instruction each child needs.
Yeah, so it's all about that relationship and getting to know that. And I love how you said it's going to come natural, not to get overwhelmed. I like that. So great advice, Miss Donna. All right, Miss Stephanie, I'll let you take us home.
Well, I especially want to thank you, Miss Donna, for joining us today. And I want to thank everyone else who joined onto our podcast today for this week's Exceptional Educators podcast. And I am excited that we got to learn some things about SDI. I'm excited that we had a wonderful teacher who's been with us for many years and has done great projects with her kids. But if you want deeper understanding, more specific tools or strategies, you can always visit theholler.org. And if you have any other questions, you can email Miss Cheryl Mathis at Miss Cheryl Mathis at theholler.org. And we also have a Facebook page at KVEC Exceptional Children, or the Instagram of KVECEC. And you can visit theholler.org, KVEC, and KVEC Special Ed. If you want to view any of our previous podcasts, that's where you'll find them.
Yep, absolutely.
This will be our last podcast of the year, and we hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And I am so glad that our last podcast this year is with Miss Donna.
Yeah, definitely so.
And until next time,
we'll holler at you later. Thank you, guys.